Hello there, welcome to the very first episode of the Dominaria United Pauper set review. This is going to be discussing the white commons, their impact on the Pauper constructed, limited, and cube format. I'm joined by my good friend Josh, aka Mayo on the internet. We're going to jump right in. I hope you enjoy. Card number one I have is our Gideon Cavalier.
Yeah.
3-drop. It's an Orc Knight for some reason. 2/2 ETB, make a 1/1 soldier, and enlist. I think enlist is a really interesting mechanic, but I don't know that this is the card I want to have it.
Yeah, I don't want this creature having enlist being in the cube. Generally, you want enlist to have a bigger butt, and it's very specific without summoning Sickness Clause of enlist. Makes me not want to even have the ability.
Yeah, I would agree. Just to clarify, this is not specific to cube, just Pauper in general, although we will make an acknowledgement to cards that are probably going to make the cube.
Yeah, I think that cube would be the closest this card makes it to being in Pauper. I mean, aside from the common rarity.
I don't know. I kind of think the 1/3 is not terrible, but I don't know. We'll get to that in a second. Other than this being a knight and potentially having some strange tribal support, I don't see a whole lot of redeeming for this. Any extra thoughts?
No, that's my thoughts exactly.
All right, moving on to Argivian Phalanx. We have our first of the cycle of cost reduction cards. 6 mana, 4/4 human core soldier with Vigilance, but it costs less for each creature you control. What do you think you have to pay for this for you to be happy? 4?
3.
You want to pay 3 for this?
I want to pay 3 for this.
But is that the minimum when you think this card's worth playing? Or is like 4 okay? 4/4 for 4 Vigilance?
I mean, 4 mana for 4/4.
It's certainly not good enough in cube,
there.
But what about like regular Pauper? Do you think that this stands up to anything like Gurmag Angler or some of the other cards of this cycle that we'll get to?
No, this is just too small in regards to those other costing.
Yeah, 4/4 really is the bad part of this, right? Like,
yeah,
that 4 toughness is really just not where you want it to be. I can see like cards like Battle Screech making this card like pretty good, right? Because one cast of Battle Screech, and all of a sudden this is a 2-drop. Like, that's not bad.
Yeah, and he's one of the easier ones to get the cost down to a reasonable level.
Yeah, you certainly feel like you have more like proactive ways to reduce this guy's cost, but I will say he's also the one that like most often will probably be dead in your hand, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this guy. I'm not really impressed with a lot of the cards in this cycle. I think this is probably the best one. I think this is probably what White wanted, but I don't think it's good enough being a 4/4 in the face of like, you know, Mur Enforcer and Pauper, or like Gurmag Angler, the 5/5 Serpent, the 5/5 Death Touch dude. Like, this guy just doesn't feel like it holds up. Also, in a format full of Galvanic Blasts, 4 toughness is not what you want these days.
Yeah, that's I agree there. I will say the one upside of this, and it's not comparing it to other cards in this cycle, but comparing it to other cards with a similar cost reduction ability. There's a 5 mana Selesnya 4/4 Vigilance as well that has Convoke on it, and I think this is a strict upgrade for that. So if that Selesnya card were ever to make it somewhere, I think this Argivian Phalanx would make it in first.
Oh, that's probably a good point. The Convoke Centaur, Rosemane Centaur, I think, right?
Yeah, something like that.
That card, yeah, I think that card's still in the cube specifically because it's green-white, and that color combination just doesn't have a whole lot of good top end. But I can certainly see this in white, especially if like white tokens makes a resurgence in the cube. As far as constructed Pauper goes, I could see maybe this being a 2 of in like some of the cheaper decks that play Battle Screech, but as a whole, I don't see a ton that's going to play more than maybe 2 of this card.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, if you're flashing back Battle Screech, it already costs 1,
Yeah.
right? So it's, and you're in a good spot, but I don't know if you're winning more at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's move on then. What are we looking at? Artillery Blast. 2-mana instant. Oh, this is our first domain card of the set.
Mm.
I don't like this card. I think this card wants to be Tribal Flames really badly, and the instant tag is good, but the tapped creature clause is just the death sentence.
Yeah, I don't think
Great
there's
art,
any
though.
world. It's a cool card,
Great
and
art.
this is definitely a draft common, but you're never playing this over something like Swift Justice or Swift
Right, yeah, I was
Onslaught.
just going to make that comparison. I think Swift
Hmm.
Justice is just strictly better than this. Um, but as domain enablers go, I don't think this is a bad one. I think your point about draft common being a good one. I think this is going to be like solid limited removal.
Oh yeah, there's a
But
couple other good removal spells they have in white,
yeah,
but
specifically
um,
the new downgraded O-ring, which feels really bad, but will probably be good.
yeah. And the strange thing is though, it's domain, right? So like you're not necessarily going to be restricted to white anyways. So this is
Yeah, it seems kind of
probably going to be
peculiar.
the worst removal spell that you would ever have.
Well, I mean, there is a world where you just cast this for 3 domain, right? And like you're playing a 2 or 3 color deck, not a 4 or 5 color deck that doesn't have access to many good removal spells. Like, say you're in like Bant, right? And you just don't get red or
Mhm.
black for better removal. This is still 2 mana for 4 damage, which is a lot in limited.
Yeah, and it could be just Swift Justice number 5,
Yeah, I think
but
the +1 actually does a substantial amount of work here as far as the rate in limited goes. But as far as constructed and cube, I don't see this making the cut in like any
mhm,
iteration.
yeah.
Great art though, great art.
Mhm.
Chandra like powering a an artillery cannon is pretty sweet. Although I think that's Joyra, right? Yeah, yeah. Joyra modified ancient Thrawn artillery cannons
Mhm.
to fire. Yeah, yeah. Still cool art. All right, moving on. Banalish Faithbonder. Okay, so this is the one I actually wanted to talk about with Enlist that I think might be good. 1/3 Vigilance for 2 with Enlist. Um, Normally, I'm on board with you. I think the last instance of Enlist just really wasn't good enough. I don't like that you have to tap a creature without summoning sickness. I think that key is just it's just such a bad clause on this ability. But I'm not mad at this. I think the butt makes this card reasonable as a 2-drop. It has vigilance, so you're able to leave something back to block with instead of tapping out for your attackers on enlist. I think this is probably going to be really good and limited.
Mhm. Yeah, and this card can actually make it um in a few different places just because again, vigilance. You're not tapping out when you're attacking with him. You'll have him to block. You do want to use the lower end of the creatures. Like you want to make your opponent use everything you can on smaller creatures of yours. This is just ticking all the boxes that I'd expect Enlist to be good on. You tap your big bomb and you swing it in with a 7/3 Banalish Faith Bonder that didn't tap. I'm pretty happy there.
Yeah, I'm not mad at this card. I think this is probably where enlist wants to be. Um and I'm not mad. It's got like a 2 out of 5 art though. I'm really not impressed with the art on that one.
Yeah, he looks like a tapper, doesn't he?
He does. He looks like a reprint of Gideon's Lockkeeper. All right. What's up next? Oh, we get our first kicker card, Banalish Sleeper, our first Phyrexian of the set. Which looks like somebody doing a Flashbag Marauders impression, if we're being honest, but with more steps, right? You've got to pay white and black to make a Flashbag Marauder. I'll be honest, I'm not impressed with very many of the kicker cards in this set. We'll take a look at them as we work through here, but this card seems probably reasonable and limited, but I don't see him being played in a ton else.
Yeah, um, I don't really remember the last time I played a fleshbag in Pauper, honestly.
Exactly. I'm just not impressed with that ability. If it was kicker, each opponent sacrifices
Mm-hmm.
a creature, I'm all over this card,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Yeah, like the Blade Key, or the guy from Malak here.
yeah,
That
but having
vampire was
to
insane.
Malakir Blood Chief? No, not Blood Chief.
I think it
Gatekeeper
was like
Malakir, that
Gatekeeper.
one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of paying two colors in a 3-drop to then sacrifice my 3-drop. That seems pretty bad to me, but I mean, I think kicker's a cool ability. I'm excited to see some of the better kicker cards in the set. This just isn't one of them for me.
Yeah, something to note, it does have two very relevant creature types, and
Yeah.
it's also effectively a Blade of the Sixth Pride if you're not kicking it, and that's
Yeah.
totally fine. Um, I do think there are better 3/1s you could be playing, um, but I mean, if you're in white and black and you've got some really sick card advantage engine that you somehow you're able to constantly refresh him from your grave to your hand, then I think you're doing okay. But if you're gonna
Yeah.
set up a combo like that, I think
I
you'd
think
probably
that's a
want to
good
win.
point. The relevant creature types might find a place for this, but all in all, cool card, but I just don't think it has a home. Looking at Pauper Constructed, I mean, the one deck that even plays these colors really is Pestilence, and you're never playing an X1 in that deck. And as far as
Exactly.
Cube, I just can't imagine this card being better than things we already have. Final thoughts? Anything else?
No, no, that's all.
All right, let's move on to Charismatic Vanguard, 3/2 Dwarf Soldier for 3, with a very good activated ability. I mean, talk about threat of activation. I feel like this card's going to be a powerhouse in Limited.
Yeah, I like the unicorn that pumped for 4 and gave vigilance more
Yes,
than I
that
like about
card
this
was
guy.
great.
Yeah. Um, yeah. The pumping on him and not giving a keyword, I think is just really expensive.
Yeah, it was Steadfast Unicorn, right? The 1-drop.
Um,
Yeah, it's a
I can
one.
remember
It's a
the
one
art,
two for one.
not the name.
Um,
It's a 1/2, yeah.
and the activation is for 4. Yeah, I do think that the 4-mana activation is much better than 5-mana activation. I think that difference is huge and limited. We have
Mm-hmm.
seen another variant of this, which was Cliffside Lookout, and that was in like Battle for Zendikar, or Return to Zendikar, or something like that. That was
Yeah, I
a
remember that.
a 1/1 for one with this 5-mana ability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't hate that this is a 3/2 for 3 instead of like a 1/1 for one or a 1/2 for one. I don't know if you'll ever activate this more than once in Limited. Um, but I think that, looking at kind of this soldier deck, we've already seen one token producer in white at common. I think there's a reasonable like go wide deck because we've seen payoffs. This is a second payoff for go wide, and it's a mana outlet for the late game on a reasonably sized mid range creature. I think this card will probably see a lot of play in Limited. I don't think this card will see any play in like Constructed. This is very clearly a Limited card. Um, I don't think this is going to make the cut in the cube. I'll be honest. But as far as like Dom U Limited, like looking to play Limited in Vegas or something, I think this card is one to look out for in drafts. This card's going to be a powerhouse.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree. He's this is a draft common
Oh
through
yeah.
and through. Like there's the unicorn is just cheaper, uh, in all counts. It's got the same butt,
Mhm.
so they die to the same things. And I'm feeling much better if they have to kill a one drop than they kill, than they kill my turn three play where I tap out.
I mean, I
Um,
like that's a fair argument, but I like that this has 3 power and doesn't have to isn't dead on the back foot. Like unicorn is so bad when you're behind. This card's reasonable at least as a trading blocker, you know.
yeah,
But let's move on to the next card we have, which is one I'm excited about: Citizen's Arrest. The new, I mean, oh, how far away from O-Ring we have fallen, but um, this card's going to be good in this limited. It just is. Like, O-Ring is O-Ring, and this isn't that, but it's close enough that it's still going to be good. Like, this is not Journey to Nowhere. This is not O-Ring. Those are clearly better cards, but this is a more mana intensive imitation, and those cards were just so far ahead of the curve. I think that even as a poor knockoff, this is gonna get played.
yeah. Um, it's it really is just worse. The only benefit to doing Citizen's Rest over O-Ring would be if, for whatever reason, you have a white devotion deck,
Right.
and if you want to gain that extra one
Or if you
pip
need
of
like
life or
extra O
something,
rings or
yeah,
something, that'd be like I don't think this will see play in Pauper. Period. I think this is
mm,
another one of those very specific limited commons.
yeah,
But I'm not mad at this in limited either. I mean, this is definitely strong signals to white being reasonable in limited because we've seen a couple of go wide payoffs. We've seen a token producer. We've seen some good cheap drops, some good expensive drops, and now we've got two solid removal spells. For limited, white definitely seems like a deep color. It kind of just does everything in this set, and I'm not mad. All we need is card draw, and we're in business.
yeah. I think that's how they're gating white.
Probably.
But Citizen's Arrest, yeah, this is the one that I was mentioning um, as better removal when we were talking up about the artillery blast.
Right.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
this,
definitely.
and there's definitely a good white removal in draft, but um, I mean it stops there.
Yeah. All right. Solid O-ring knockoff. Will see play in limited. Will not see play outside of limited because O-ring and Journey exists. But this next one is kind of interesting as far as Pauper commons come. Clockwork Drawbridge. I hate that this has the artifact subtype. I think that makes it decidedly worse. But this being a wall has some amount of synergy in the Pauper format with Defender. It also is a tapper, which is really interesting because we have not seen a new one, anyways, in a while. I don't like that this is 3 mana to tap, though. That just seems so far off of rate for what we're used to. Um, I think this could be an interesting card for like walls combo if you're getting beat to death with flyers or something that you just can't inherently deal with easily. But outside of that kind of fringe case where like you really need a way to answer Squadron Hawk in walls or something, um, I don't think this is getting played anywhere.
Yeah, there's some more exciting defenders
Yeah.
that they set us to offer. This one, you're playing it in common, and you're more likely going to block with it for even if you have the 3 mana up, because you might want to be um, leaving the mana for more effective ways of removal, which we've seen white have. So
Yeah, I'm tempted to agree. I think this is generally a pass. Next, we get what is probably the best removal spell in white in this set, which is Destroy Evil. I think this card's great. Um, I'll caveat that I think this card is great for limited. This feels a lot like God, what was that card? Like, Reprisal. That's what it was called. From, like, Journey to Nyx, where you destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. It can't be regenerated. It was a white instant from Theros block. Um,
Yeah, I've seen that ability on uncommons before.
yeah.
Um,
I like that it's downshifted. I don't know that Pauper necessarily needs this, but it certainly does target Mer Enforcer, Gurmag Anglers, Crushers, a couple of the new 5 power things that are going to come out of this set. And the enchantment text, like, it is a modal ability. The Destroy enchantment is relevant in a format full of, like, pestilences and,
Makeshift.
well, makeshift munitions, but also modern age.
Yes.
This definitely has, like, a lot of answers in it, which is interesting. I don't know that this is really where you want to be, but it is an option, and I'm not that mad at it.
Yeah, I mean, I like both modes on it. They're both very applicable. And they're both appropriately costed, which is unique for a modal spell. Usually it costs like 1 mana more, or like it's got an extra color in there to make it a bit harder to cast. But this is actually, I would pay 2 for both of those abilities and be happy about it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think this is a pretty good cost. Next up, we have our next kicker card in white, which is the new Anthem effect, Heroic Charge, which is an interesting take on, like, the Warflare type effects that we've had in the past. I think this is probably one of the worst, but we've got a 4 mana instant here that gives creatures you control 2/1 until end of turn. But if you kick it, they also gain Trample. Now, I don't know about you, but 6 mana for that effect seems like way too much. Looking at cards like Rally the Peasants, looking at cards like Warflare that just straight up untap your attackers. Um, I mean, for 6 mana, Rally the Peasants can give your cards 4/0, and then, like, do you even care if they have Trample? You're just gonna kill them. So I don't know. Do you have thoughts about this card? I've seen you cast a Rally the Peasants or two.
Yeah, and I wasn't happy casting Rally either. I'm like, the effect feels like it should cost not exactly less, um as is. Like, it should be 2.
You know what
But
I
if it
think
is
they
going to
should
be,
have
then they should
done
have
in
more
this card?
specific
I think
cost.
they should have reversed it. I think this should
Mm.
be like a 1 mana, a one colorless, one red instant that gives creatures you control trample, and then if you kick it for white colorless, it also gives them +2/+1. That makes it just Warflare, but instead of untapping, you get trample.
Hmm. It's interesting. I
I
was going
think
to say
that
you can
card would be
actually.
decidedly better than this. I think the 6 mana is
Mhm.
just way too much money. Way too much for what this deck wants to do.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say reverse it, but maybe reduce the kicker to 1 red, or
Yeah, maybe make it
knock the
like a
colorless off
three
heroic
a
charge.
3 mana spell and then kicker 1 red. I think that total cost this should only have 4 if it's kicked. There's no way in hell you should have to pay more than 4 mana total for that full text box. It just doesn't seem reasonable.
Uh, I don't know. I mean, Warflare, you were saying it doesn't give you the trample to get through. It does effectively gives your creatures retroactive vigilance.
Well, but that's kind of what I
Um,
mean, right? Like Vigilance, Trample are very similar abilities in terms of adding a keyword for mana cost.
mhm.
And generally speaking, as far as mana efficiency to the spells that give them, Trample is given at a reduced mana cost to Vigilance most of the time. You have cards like Ancestral Anger or what is it, like Crash Through, that just, like, generic give creatures trample for 1 mana, draw a card. Like,
Mhm.
this seems so far off rate from that card, and just, I don't know. I cannot be convinced that 6 mana is the right rate for this.
Yeah. So 6, definitely not. 5 mana. I put more value on the some form of evasion than I do with just not tapping when you attack.
That's probably correct. I think that this would have been interesting. Like, I think the best version of this card is just flipped around. I think that it starts by giving trample, and then if it's kicked, it pumps. There is a different version of this card that just knocks a generic mana off the original casting cost and plays like what's it called? Like Honor of the Pure or whatever. The white colorless instant that gives white creatures you control +2/+2. I feel like you could have just knocked a generic mana off of this casting cost and made it 2/1 for 3 mana, and then kicker 1 red to give trample. I think 4 is where this card should be, not 6. But even 5, like 5 is better, but I still think it's too much.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, regardless, I don't think it's being played outside of draft.
Yeah, I don't think this is making the cube at all in the face of Rally the Peasants, Warflayer. Even like Voltaic even like Voltaic Claws, I like more than this, I think. All right, next up we have Juniper Order Root Weaver. Which is another kicker card. 2 mana human druid, so human is a relevant subtype. 2/2, so it's just a bear. But with kicker for 1 green, when it ETBs, you get a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Now, this card I actually think might make the cube. Again, I can't imagine this is the right rate for this. 3 mana for like a vanilla 3/3 or a 2/2 with a 1/1 counter coming with it seems high. Like, I'm really looking for like a 2-drop with this. Like, look at like, what is it? Like Pollen Bright Druid was a 1/3 for 2 that could ETB and put a 1/1 counter on something, and you didn't need to kick it. Like,
I thought it was a 1/1 Pollen Bright.
It might be a 1/2. I don't remember, but it seems better than this. I mean, yeah, I don't know. This seems overcosted to me, but I have that opinion about almost all of the kicker cards at the common level in this set. I think every one of them is overcosted. I think that they're deliberately dragging their feet for this limited so that it's a little bit slower, it's a little bit less powerful. And it really makes the bombs of this format important, because I think the common power level is just lacking in this set, to be honest. I think there are a couple of standout cards, but not very many. And in limited especially, you're going to play a lot of sub-rate creatures.
Yeah. I would say that this creature probably doesn't make the cube, although it does fit with what you're trying to do. There are just other creatures that do this and more.
Yeah.
Granted, a smaller body, but it doesn't cost 3. Or those don't cost 3. However, this card, specifically in draft, it's going to be really good.
Oh, yeah. 1/1 counter on target creature of your choice is very good in limited.
Yeah. But
especially
I don't see this making a cut outside of there either.
I would agree.
Yeah, there's just a lot of these commons that are not up to the power level of other commons.
Yeah. All right. Next up on the white buffet is Mesa Cavalier. Mesa Cavalier is it's the newest 2/1 flyer for 3. ETB gain 2 life. I mean, honestly, I like that this has human knight as creature types, but I think that it's just not good. Like, this card will probably be good in limited just as a 2 power flyer, because they're just good in limited. Evasion is good, but gain 2 life is never where you want to be. I mean, this just feels so bad when you look at Overseer from New Capenna that had draw a card in that text box. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you gain a life off of that as well. And I'm not a mathematician.
1 card and 1 life are not equivalent exchange.
Is better.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, Edward from Full Metal would be very disappointed. There's no law of equivalent exchange here.
Mm.
Um, yeah, not a fan of this card. Obviously, evasionary flyers, evasionary attackers specifically in limited are going to be powerful and going to be popular, but I'm just not signing up for this card in anywhere but opening sealed packs.
Yep.
All right, next we've got Samite Herbalist, 2/1 human cleric for 2. Becomes tapped, gain a life, scry 1. So this to me is very akin to God, what was the 1/3 from War of the Spark that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it gains a power and you scry 1?
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
I know what you
This
mean.
reminds me of that card, but like way worse. That being said, I think that this card is definitely going to see play in limited. This card might even make cube.
Yeah.
Like I get the Samite healer reference here, and I like the callback. But realistically, you're gonna play this as a 2/1 bear for 2. You're gonna attack one time. You're gonna gain 1 life, scry 1, and then it's gonna trade off for their 1-drop or 2-drop. I don't know that you're super happy about that, but if you need to fill out a curve, like this could certainly be a 16th or 17th creature.
Um, I have another take on that actually.
Okay, what you got?
So I'm happy we got some difference here. Uh, so this is a card that you really, really want other enlist cards for.
Oh yeah, enlisting this card is definitely what the design is for.
Hmm.
Um,
And this card is going to be a slam dunk in draft. Scrying 1 in white, that's going to be pretty much your repeatable card advantage. I put that in very italicized air quotes.
yeah, I'm with you.
Um, Gaining life just to make sure that you survive until that turn to draw the card that you scryed to the top. Um, but I mean, I'd be happy with 2 of these cards in a deck, in a draft deck. But no more than that.
I think it's going to
It's
depend on how much enlist you've got, but I agree with you. I don't think you want like 4 of this card by any means, but 1 or 2 is probably a good number. I do like that it's a payoff. I like that it stacks, so if you've got more than 1 and you can enlist more than 1 card, like you can start really churning through your deck.
mm,
But I think this is probably like a 17th card unless you're like firmly in the enlist archetype.
yeah. And then outside of that, it could be cute with flashbacks that make you tap a white creature. Like
Oh,
Prismatic
true. Yeah,
Strands
yeah.
or Battle Screech. It could be just extra stuff you get for casting your thing for free.
I would be
And
surprised if this makes the cut in constructed, but I definitely
mm,
see your point about using this as an enlist payoff in limited. I can get on that boat. All right. Next up, coming down to the end of the line for white, we've got 2 left. The penultimate is our first instance of stun counters on stall for time. 3-mana instant. Tap up to 2 cards or 2 target creatures. If this spell was kicked, put a stun counter on each of those. Stun is the new snake venom. It basically prevents them from being untapped next upkeep. And my favorite subtext on any text box: draw a card. So big fan of this card, to be honest with you. I was a big fan of God, what was it called? There was a blue spell for this in Eldraine that tapped 2 cards, draw a card, or tapped 2 creatures, draw a card in blue. Um,
mm,
I don't know how happy I am paying 5 mana to tap 2 creatures twice to draw a card, but I could certainly see this as like a baby white cryptic command in combat where you just tap their creatures down, draw a card.
yeah. Um, a baby cryptic is what I'd prescribe here. It's actually easier to cast. Just costs more mana though.
Mhm.
Um, I will say that stun cannons are a welcome buff to the snake venom mechanic.
Yeah, I agree. Being able to
Because,
proliferate them is huge.
well, that and also they just said when they become untapped, or they don't untap during their next upkeep. This is untapped at all.
Yeah, if
So
they
if you had
would be
something like,
untapped.
yeah, if you had something like Freed from the Real, you have to pay
Sure.
2 blue to
Hmm.
untap it. But this is just no matter what your opponent, what you do, the next untap instance is skipped for that
Sure, sure.
creature. And it's got a good way of keeping track of it for the game states.
Yeah, fair enough.
Um, I I don't want to have more than one of these in a deck,
I think there's
and I don't.
probably a deck that wants 2 or 3 of these just because it does have that draw a card text at the bottom of it. But ultimately, I this is one of those cards that you play in lieu of removal if you have none in your pool.
Mm,
Where you're just trying to get through fast enough that they can't really just start pumping out creatures you can't deal with. Um, but ultimately, like, if you just completely ignore the kicker text, I like this card, and with the kicker text, I like this card. Again, I think it's overcosted. I think that the total cost of this with kicker should be 4, not 5. I think that most of the kicker cards, like I said earlier, are overcosted by at least 1. I think this is in a similar boat, but um, at least this draws a card to replace itself. I'm a fan of this in limited. I think baby white cryptic command is where I want to be a lot.
yeah, I see that. Outside of um, outside of draft, I don't see this existing. Um, I don't think this fits into the cube either, but it's
No,
got a
almost
lot of
certainly not.
really relevant.
If
It's
we
got a lot
still
of relevant
had
cards.
what was it called? The 2 white tap 2 creatures with flashback, like fall of dread, something of dread. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't recall that one. Tap
Uh,
2 creatures. I
yeah.
mean, I'm thinking of pressure point, but
No, no,
that's
no. This was a flashback card. It was white base with blue flashback. It was something of dread. One. I don't know if that card was still in the cube. If that was still in the white blue slot, I could see an argument for this card replacing it. Um, but without that card to like very cleanly make an argument of like this is a tap spell, so we're playing a new tap spell. Like I don't see this making the cut. Any other ideas here?
uh is there ever a time when you're playing this for 3?
All the time. I'm gonna play this for 3 more than I play it for 5.
I like it way better that way.
Yeah. I'm when I
Mm,
said baby cryptic, I meant 3 mana, not 5.
mm,
Like I'm paying 3 mana to tap their attackers, draw a card. Like I'm doing that a lot more than I do 5.
yeah, right. I could see that.
All
I
right.
was always thinking about the paying 5 for it,
Yeah,
but
no, I think paying 5
mm,
is way too much for that. I think that you can definitely win some games on paying 5 for this, but I think by and large you're going to cast this for 3. But that being said, like I said, I think everything with kicker is overcosted in this set, so maybe the set's just really slow and 5 mana is going to be totally manageable. Who knows? All right, and then last but not least, we have our final white card, Take Up the Shield. This is one of the Keystone artworks of the set, with the stained glass shield emblemery that we will see on a bunch of the custom playmats and things like that at Magic 30. Um, 2 mana instant, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. It gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. Um, I'm not a fan of this card. Um, and it's very simple for me. In the face of something like Unexpected Fangs, where they gain a lifelink counter, and cards like what was it, like Karametra's protection, where they're like it can give +2/+2 and indestructible for 1 if they're what was it, if they're an enchantment creature, I think, or if they're
Yeah, or if
enchanted
they're
or an enchantment
enchanted.
creature.
Hmm.
This just seems subpar to me. Like if this was the white version of Uninspected Fangs, where it was a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter, I would be on board for this in a heartbeat. But lifelink and indestructible till end of turn without card replacement. It doesn't even have like scry on it or some small version of advantage. I think because we have seen so many non-damage removal sources just in white already, I think there's going to be enough that gets around indestructible in this set that this card's not going to be good. I don't know.
Yeah,
Do you disagree with me here?
this is no. Take up the shield is really just trying to be a combat trick with a bunch of fancy words on it, and costing 2. That's it's putting you really far behind when you're trying to play. Just trying to keep the 2 up until you get to around maybe turn 5 or 6, assuming you've hit a land drop every turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather just have a removal spell or another creature.
Yeah, or Unexpected Fangs. I would literally rather play Unexpected Fangs than this. It just seems better.
I do say that it matters the size of the creature that you're putting this on. If you're going to be putting Unexpected Fangs on like a 3/3, then yes, Unexpected Fangs is undoubtedly better. It's most likely surviving the combat. It's not, no question there. Take up the shield is probably going to be better on like a 1/1 or a 2/2 if you need to, um, like bait your opponent into attacking, and then you pump your creature up a little bit, you save it, you gain the life that you lost from the creatures you couldn't block. It it's a pretty good combat trick, but it's not going to be doing much else for you.
I think that potentially the best use of this card ignores 2/3 of the keywords on it. And it's just 2 mana, target creature you control gains indestructible. Like, I think the best use of this card is defensively, and you play it like a Vines of the Vastwood. But I think there's enough removal in this set that gets around it, that this card's just not going to be useful that much. So I don't see a use for it. I don't think it's going to be in Constructed. I think so much of the pump spells are better. And yeah, I don't think this has a home in Cube either. So I think that's ending white on a little bit of a sad note. All right, that just about wraps up the bunch of cards for this color. Please like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. It's a brand new YouTube channel. Any help really does matter. Share this video with your friends. And by all means, let me know if you think we misevaluated something. Sleeper Bomb, what's your favorite card out of this color? So let us know down in the comments below. As usual, goodbye forever. Let's see you tomorrow.